People come to the Ozarks expecting forests, rivers, and a certain kind of quietness. What they don't expect is a European castle, or a canyon that swallows a river and spits it out in a different state, or a village that an artist dismantled and reassembled in a field from pure stubbornness, or a light that has been glowing in the dark southwest of Joplin since before the automobile existed and that nobody has ever explained. The Ozarks hold things that have no business being here. These are 7 of them. Place 1. Ha Tonka, the European castle ruins on a Missouri bluff. In 1905, a wealthy Kansas City businessman named Robert Snyder purchased 5,000 acres of Ozark land, including his own private spring-fed lake, and began building a European-style castle on a bluff above the Niangua River. He imported stonemasons from Europe to get the stonework right. He had a vision of something that belonged in the Scottish Highlands or the Rhine Valley, built instead in the Missouri Hill Country overlooking one of the largest springs in the state. He never saw it finished. In 1906, Snyder was killed in one of Missouri's first automobile accidents. His sons continued construction and completed the castle in 1922. It served as a summer retreat, then was leased as a hotel. In 1942, sparks from a chimney ignited the roof and fire gutted the building. The carriage house burned the same day. Vandals burned the water tower in 1976. What remains today are the stone walls, roofless, open to the sky, the window openings framing views across the lake of the Ozarks below. That lake is its own part of the story. The Snyder family fought the construction of Bagnell Dam in the 1920s and lost. The rising waters of the Lake of the Ozarks divided their estate and drowned the private lake Snyder had built his dream around. Today, the castle ruins sit above a lake that erased the original vision they were meant to overlook. Ha Tonka is now a state park. The ruins are on the National Register of Historic Places. The name reportedly means laughing waters or smiling waters in the language of the Osage people. The castle looks nothing like Missouri. It looks like it was dropped here from somewhere else entirely, which in a sense it was. Place 2. Grand Gulf, the canyon that swallows a river. In the far southeast corner of the Missouri Ozarks, in Oregon County, a few miles from the Arkansas border, there is a canyon that most Missourians have never heard of, and that has no business existing where it does. Grand Gulf stretches 3/4 of a mile through the Ozark limestone, with walls that rise 130 feet from the canyon floor. A natural bridge 250 feet long spans the upper end, with a 75-foot opening large enough to drive a building through. The floor of the canyon receives almost no direct sunlight for most of the year. Missouri's state geologist once called it the most impressive karst feature in the state. Grand Gulf was declared a national natural landmark in 1971. What makes it genuinely strange is not the canyon itself, but what the canyon does to water. At the upper end, a stream called Bustle Branch runs across the surface until it reaches the edge of Grand Gulf and simply disappears, falling into the chasm and vanishing into the underground drainage system. That water travels underground through the cave passages that remain from the collapsed system, crosses the state line from Missouri into Arkansas beneath the ground, and emerges at Mammoth Spring in Arkansas, which is one of the largest springs in the United States. A river born in Missouri is reborn in Arkansas, underground the entire distance between. A high school student in 1967 proved this by injecting fluorescent dye into the water at Grand Gulf and waiting. The dye appeared at Mammoth Spring. The connection between the two states, suspected for generations, was confirmed by a science fair project. Place 3. Oasis, the town under Table Rock Lake. When Table Rock Dam closed in 1958, and the waters of the White River began to rise across the southwest Missouri Ozarks, the process was methodical and irreversible. Families relocated. Some buildings were moved to higher ground, some were burned or demolished to prevent navigation hazards, and some were simply left where they stood as the water came up around them. The village of Oasis on the banks of Long Creek was largely destroyed by a flood in 1957, the year before the lake formed, and what remained was swallowed when the reservoir filled. The village had a mill, a post office, a blacksmith, a general store, and the particular texture of a community that had existed long enough to feel permanent. It went under 100 feet of water. Divers can still reach it. The structures that have survived a half-century of submersion sometimes become visible from above when water levels drop enough during drought years. You can see the outline of the main street, the foundations of the mill, and portions of the old church. A guidebook describes Oasis as a Midwestern Atlantis. The Thousand Hills website calls it exactly that. What surprises people is not that a town exists underwater, but that this specific town in this specific corner of the Ozarks is still largely intact and still findable. It sits in the dark, 100 feet down in a lake that 4 million people visit every year, and almost none of them know what lies below. Place 4. Welch Spring Hospital, the ruins at the river's edge. On the Current River in southern Missouri, in a stretch of the Ozark National Scenic Riverways that draws paddlers from across the country, there is a stone hospital collapsing slowly into the riverbank. It was built in the early 1900s by a doctor named Charles LaRue Ingalls, who believed the mineral springs at this location had therapeutic properties. He purchased the land and began constructing a sanatorium, a stone building of genuine ambition, intended to use the spring water as treatment for tuberculosis and other ailments. The building was never fully completed. The medical rationale shifted as understanding of disease improved. The facility opened briefly and then closed. The doctor's vision was abandoned while the walls were still standing. The structure has been decaying ever since, accelerated by floods that regularly batter the riverbank site. The spring still flows from beneath the building, cold, clear water emerging from the Ozark limestone at a constant temperature, regardless of season, exactly as it did when Ingalls believed it could heal the sick. The walls are standing but deteriorating. Vines have taken substantial portions. The interior is open to the weather. What makes Welch Spring unusual is not just the ruin, but the combination. An ambitious stone building of institutional scale in a location that can only be reached by foot or canoe, on the bank of one of the most beautiful rivers in the Ozarks, with a mineral spring still flowing beneath the floor of something that was built to use that spring and then abandoned. The current river moves past it without slowing down. Subscribe before you go further. Hit the button and the bell. 3 more places. Place 5. Big Spring, the largest spring in the United States. Near Van Buren in Carter County, in the deepest part of the Missouri Ozarks, water rises from the ground at a volume that defies comprehension. Big Spring is the largest single outlet spring in the United States. On an average day, it discharges 276 million gallons of water. On high flow days, that number reaches 840 million gallons. To put that in some kind of context, the entire Mississippi River at low flow carries less water per day than Big Spring produces on a high flow day. The spring creates a river from nothing, cold, clear, blue-green water emerging from a single point in the limestone and forming an immediate, substantial waterway that joins the current river within a quarter mile of the source. The temperature of the water holds at a constant 58 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of the season. It maintains that temperature because it comes from the deep Ozark aquifer, which is insulated from seasonal variation by the mass of rock above it in a way that surface water cannot be. In summer, the spring runs visibly colder than the air, generating a faint mist above the pool. In winter, it runs visibly warmer than the landscape around it. The constancy is the thing that surprises people most. Standing next to it in July or January, the water looks and feels the same. What the spring reveals is the scale of the Ozark aquifer system moving beneath the surface. The water that comes up here fell as rain somewhere in the Ozarks and filtered down through the limestone for a period of time that varies by the source but runs into years or decades. The entire underground plumbing of this region, built over millions of years of karst dissolution, is delivering its output at this single point. Most visitors drive past the interpretive signage, look at the water for a few minutes, and leave without fully absorbing what they are looking at. Place 6. The Ozark Spook Light, the unexplained light, southwest of Joplin. 11 miles southwest of Joplin, Missouri, down a stretch of road near the Oklahoma border that locals call the Devil's Promenade, something glows. It has been glowing since at least 1881, possibly much longer. There are accounts suggesting the light predates European settlement in the area, and various traditions attribute it to Quapaw and Osage people who considered the road a spirit path. By the time the area was documented in the late 19th century, the light had already been a fixture in local memory for generations. The spook light appears as a ball of orange or white light, roughly the size of a basketball to the size of a bushel basket depending on the account. It bobs and drifts above the road at heights ranging from just above ground to treetop level. It changes color. It splits. It approaches vehicles and retreats. Thousands of people have seen it over more than a century. It has been photographed and filmed. Investigators from the Army Corps of Engineers studied it in the 1940s, declared it a natural phenomenon, and declined to specify exactly which one. That finding did not end curiosity or debate. The most common scientific explanation offered today is refracted headlight beams from Route 66 or later Interstate 44, bent by atmospheric conditions into an apparent stationary light. This explanation has one significant problem. The light was documented and described in detail before automobiles existed, before Route 66 was named in 1926, and before the roads that supposedly produced the refracted lights were built or even imagined. Whatever is producing it was active before any of the proposed mechanical causes existed. The light still appears. People still drive out along the Devil's Promenade to watch for it, especially after dark on clear nights. It has been appearing reliably in the same location for at least 140 years, and the explanation that accounts for all the documented observations, including those from before 1900, does not yet exist. Place 7. Red Oak 2, the ghost town an artist brought back to life. On a stretch of rural highway a few miles outside Carthage, Missouri, there is a small town that should not be there. Red Oak was a farming community in Jasper County that followed the arc of dozens of Ozark towns, born from agriculture and commerce, sustained for decades, then hollowed out as the rural economy shifted, young people left, and the businesses that served them closed. By the 1970s, Red Oak was nearly gone. The buildings were emptying and deteriorating. The town was on its way to becoming a foundation outline in a field. Lowell Davis grew up in Red Oak. He became an artist and sculptor, moved away, built a career, and then came back. Starting in 1987, Davis began purchasing the buildings of his dying hometown: a church, a blacksmith shop, a feed store, a gas station, a schoolhouse, a jail, and physically moving them, piece by piece, to a field he owned outside Carthage. He reassembled them into a functioning village layout, filled them with artifacts and vintage items, painted murals on the walls, installed sculptures, and opened the result to visitors. Red Oak 2 is not a museum. It is not quite a tourist attraction in the conventional sense. It is an artist's reconstruction of a place that was disappearing, relocated, and reinstalled as an act of memory and will. Davis has described it as bringing his hometown back from the dead. The original buildings are genuine, not reproductions, not themed constructions, but the actual structures from the actual town, moved and rebuilt in a new arrangement that Davis designed over decades. The original Red Oak, the one that was emptying out, continues to exist a few miles away. The two communities share a name but not a location, not a purpose, and not the same relationship to time. One is fading. The other was rebuilt deliberately by one man because he decided the alternative was unacceptable. Visitors walked between buildings that were physically somewhere else 30 years ago, in a town that is technically not a town, that exists because an artist from the Ozarks refused to let his childhood disappear without a fight. It is one of the strangest things in Missouri. Almost nobody outside the Ozarks has heard of it. The Ozarks are usually described in terms of what they are: the mountains, the rivers, the caves, the quietness. These 7 places are what they contain. A castle built and burned within the same century that buried a town under a lake. A canyon that swallows rivers whole. A hospital decaying on a riverbank next to the spring it was built to use. A light that has been unexplained for longer than living memory. None of them are famous. Most people driving through this region have no idea they exist. That is what makes the Ozarks worth paying attention to. Subscribe before you leave. Hit the bell. Drop a comment. Have you been to any of these, and what did we miss? Because the people who actually live in the Ozarks always know places that did not make this list.